Mother and father, who are trying to seek out faster-than-light travel. They meet their demise while traveling in space, leaving their privately owned space corporation to their 4 sons. The sons are Alec, Ty, Orion, and Zach. In this scene, what we're going to have happen is Ty has been arrested by the government, and he's in jail. Alec and the head of security for the corporation is also in prison, and Ty's better half, not his wife, but his secretary, confidant, Joanne, will be going out to rescue them. A couple of items you're going to find is the turtle, which is the ship that they fly, and we're going to do this a little different tonight. I'm not going to do the reading alone. My wife, Joanne, will do the reading with me. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get this started. And I hope you enjoy it.
Arriving at the meteoric installation, Joanne drove her hover up to the gate. She was nervous. Had Toma held up his end of the deal? If he hadn't, she shook the thought from her head, took some deep breaths, and lowered the window.
Your credentials, ma'am.
The guard ordered. They were hanging from her neck, so she slid them off and gave them to him.
Identification.
She fumbled through her handbag and produced her picture ID and handed it to him. She was trying not to look nervous.
He left the items and disappeared into the guard shack, while 2 more stood with weapons at the ready in front of her vehicle. She smiled at the 2 men and pretended to fuss with her hair. Returning from the shack, the man handed the items back and made a motion to the 2 in front. They stepped aside and a large gate opened. She placed the pass back onto her neck and dropped the other back into her bag. She then drove through.
A few minutes later, she was parked in front of a small building. Upon entering, 2 more guards stopped her. Lifting the pass from around her neck, they stepped aside and she began to descend the staircase. She came to a large steel door and tapped a comm button on the bulkhead next to it. A small steel door slid open, and once again she raised the pass. Some clicking and it opened. Feeling more nervous than she ever had, she walked into the small area where there were 2 more guards. She identified herself. They opened the heavy steel door. The filth and smell almost made her retch. Composing herself quickly, she entered the large dark room. The door shut behind her. She could make out several cells, but only 2 were occupied. The figure in each stirred as she made her way over to them. She stopped short and called out softly, "Ed? Alec? It's Joanne."
Both men reached the front of their cells at the same time. Alec couldn't believe his eyes. It was like seeing a ghost. "Joanne, what are you doing here? Are you out of your mind?" He noticed that the beautiful woman was dressed in a dark-colored woman's suit coat and pants. She also wore heels. He noted that this was not the best place to be wearing an outfit like that. But he did notice the Space Tech crest pin on her lapel.
She could hear the despair in his tone. "I wanted to check on you both, and when I heard you were being held at the same location, I thought I needed to make every effort. Senator Toma helped arrange my visit." Her eyes were now adjusting to the lack of light, and she could see that the 2 men had been abused repeatedly. She wanted to cry, but maintained herself.
Ed reached out, and she took his hand.
"I am so sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but they have Ty also. I don't know where he is."
"Have you talked with Zach and Orion? We hear they've been captured as well," Ed inquired.
Squeezing his hand ever so lightly, "No, I haven't seen them. Nor have I," she squeezed again, "even talked with them."
"Are they hurt? Do you at least know that?"
Again a squeeze. "No, I just don't know about that." The tone in her voice as she spoke about them and the slight squeezes made him realize they were not captive. Her being there could not be a coincidence. "I am sorry, but I can't stay any longer. It isn't permitted. I will try to stay in touch as much as I can. If by any chance I see Zach or Orion, I will tell them you said hello." With one last squeeze at the mention of their names, she let go of Ed's hand. reaching through Alec's cell, tenderly rubbing his hand, and spoke. "It'll be okay. It really will." She turned one last time to Ed and gave him a sinister smile and a small, almost imperceptible nod.
Ed was taken aback for an instant. Then it hit him like a ton of bricks. This was the moment. She was here to rescue them. Out of all the people it could be, it was Joanne. His mind ran overtime now. There was no time for a plan. He'd have to go with whatever Joanne had planned. He moved to the back of the cell, leans against the wall, hands behind his back. He began to loosen the brick he had earlier... Oops. Sorry, this is our first time doing this. So.
She made her way to the steel door, and as she knocked down the steel door to the exit, Alec and Ed noticed her take her right foot, lift it, then quickly moving it in a backward motion, hit the long heel on the ground. It broke, but hung precariously attached to the shoe. She glanced back and smiled mischievously, then once more turned to the door. The guard opened the door and she stood on her left leg, her right leg bent at the knee backwards, supporting herself on the frame of the door with her left hand. "Can you believe it? I broke a heel," she giggled. As he bent down to look, she reached down with her right hand, broke off the heel, and with one motion pressed a small hidden button. A long, thin blade emerged. With cat-like speed and deadly precision, it found its way into the unsuspecting guard's forehead with a sickening thud. He fell to the floor, blood trickling from around the implanted knife's blade.
While Joanne was disabling the guard, Ed had a device out of its hiding place and onto the lock of the cell. It was one of Zach's nano devices. The nanobots had the cell unlocked by the time the guard hit the floor. Ed was next to Joanne with blinding speed as the next guard came through. Before the guard could take a breath, Ed enveloped the man in a headlock. With a quick twist and a noticeable crack, he had broken his neck and the body collapsed next to his partner. He glanced at Joanne. She just shrugged sheepishly. He could only smile. While all that was happening, Alec just stood in shocked silence. Coming around now, he spoke. Excuse me, but if you two are going to go on a killing spree, I'd like to get out of here first. Ed located the keys on one of the dead men and moved to unlock Alec. The cell opened and he exited. "What next?" Alec asked in total astonishment. He was looking directly at Joanne. Ed removed the device from the cell lock and placed it into his trouser pocket. He was the one to answer. "We escape, of course." He walked over and gave Joanne a hug. Holding her away at a distance, he grinned. "Incredible. Just incredible." He let go, bent down, and grabbed the weapons lying on the ground. Tossing one to Alec, he kept one for himself. "Would I be wrong in guessing that you're packing?" he asked Joanne.
"Who, me?" She opened her suitcoat and undid a small flap in the lining. She pulled out a small pistol-looking weapon. "I don't believe in violence," she giggled, then slipped it into the small of her back and let the coat close. Then she discarded her high heels and dug a pair of sneakers out of her bag and slipped them on. There were two more at the top of the staircase. I should go up there alone. I'll get one of them to come down here, and then you can do whatever you need to. I'll take care of the last one. She was happy that the plan was working so far, but too much could still go wrong, and she was aware of that.
As she began to climb the staircase, Alec tugged at her coat. "I was just wondering, does Ty know what you do on the side?" He winked.
"Unfortunately, there's a lot he doesn't know," she sighed and took another step. Turned back one last time and said, "Yet."
Ed and Alec just snickered at the comment, and both were thinking about how lucky Ty would be when this was over.
She slowed to a walk near the top and was approaching the first step when the guards saw her. "Thank you. They asked if one of you gentlemen could go down. Something about plumbing, I think?"
One of the men shook his head in disgust and shouldered his weapon and began to descend the stairs. The other was watching her as she opened her bag near the door and fumbled for something. Finding a cosmetic case, she dropped it and bent down to her knees to retrieve it. Just then, there was a commotion that came from downstairs. The guard swung his weapon from his shoulders and turned toward the stairs.
But before he hit the first step, she had her weapon out from behind her back and got two quick shots off. Each found their mark. The man began to tumble down the first flight and came to a stop on the landing, right at Ed's feet.
He bent over and grabbed the man's weapon and handed it to Alec. He took it and slung the other one over his shoulder. Then he looked up and saw her looking down at them.
Well, come on, we've got a long way to go before we get out of here, she motioned.
At the top now, three stood for a moment. Alec asked, "So now what? I don't see how three of us will get past this many men." "Alec, calm down. You managed to escape the last time you faced a plethora of men," Ed reassured him. "Besides, I have to think there's more to this plan than just getting us to this point." He was eyeing Joanne.
Yes, there is, but you will have to do what I tell you. If it goes bad, well, Ed, I'll just blame you. The gleam in her eye was irreplaceable.
Heroic and funny, and that's something you don't see every day. Even through all the pain he was feeling, he was beginning to get a second wind. Next.
Okay, I've got another diversion. Hopefully it will draw most of the guards over to it. When it does, we will take advantage of their one big mistake.
And that would be? Alec asked.
Bringing the turtle here to impound it. She was all business now. All right, I'm going out there. You two stay here. You'll hear the confusion. Wait for about 45 seconds to a minute. Make sure it's after you hear it, and then come out. She straightened her outfit, dusted herself off. One last thing. My guess is you'll need those. She pointed to the weapons around their shoulders and then left the building. Making her way over to the hover, she opened the door and sat down, leaned over and under the console. Slipping out a small round charge, she set the timer for 1 minute 10 seconds. That should give it enough time to crash into the guardhouse and draw a crowd before it explodes, she thought. Activating it and attaching it to a hollow dash panel, she started the vehicle, touched a button, and it shot away toward the guard shack. "My hover!" she was screaming. "Help! My hover!" It seemed to be working. Throngs of men came out of the woodwork, racing after the unmanned vehicle. It neared the shack, and both men inside dove out just before it impacted. The sound of metal on metal was resounding as it came to a stop. She had slipped out a tiny device that Zach had directed her to get while she was at their home. She began to run toward the unguarded ship, tapping some of the small buttons as she did so. The shack, an impaled hover with dozens of men surrounding it, exploded into a massive fireball. Its intensity made her cringe and go to her knees for just an instant, and then she was up and running again. But more important was that the blast had covered the sound of the startup of the turtle's dormant engines. It shuddered and then roared to life. The hatch opened, and she managed to reach it just before it rose from its moorings. Now, finding herself in the pilot's seat, she took control of the ascending ship. The massive chains that held the ship in place strained and broke, sending fragments flying like bullets toward the men racing to stop it. Several of them collapsed after being struck.
Pushing the door open, Alec and Ed crouched down and headed out to begin the inevitable confrontation. Both men had their weapons drawn and ready, but didn't have to use them until a large shadow covered the ground where they knelt. They began to look for Joanne, but she was nowhere to be seen. All the men now had realized what was happening, and the firefight began. Ed and Alex were firing at anything that moved. They were mowing down Meteoric's men left and right. Even so, they'd been pushed back around the corner of the small building when the turtle stepped down between them and the fight. The hatch opened, and they bounded for it at a dead run. They were still firing as the enemy came from all sides of the ship. It rose quickly, hatch closing, firing plasma cannons at anything it could. The ship was rocked, and it began to dip. Stabilizing it, Joanne got the shields online. A few more large hits, and it shook violently, but no damage. The two men strapped in as fast as they could as the ship made its way away from the skirmish. It was only when the plasmat engines ignited and they were a safe distance away from the enemy that she felt relaxed. Then, shaking her shoulder-length brown hair away from her face, she spoke.
Wasn't that exciting?
It was Alec's turn. Hey, can we find some place to shower? I feel terrible. You smell terrible too, Ed interjected. He leaned over and poked Alec playfully. She can fly also. Tapping her on the shoulder, he asked, You don't happen to have a sister, do you? They all laughed. Within minutes, Ed and Alec had passed out from exhaustion.
She had delivered so far. Now it was time to meet and get those two to Zach. There was no time to waste.